The year is 2007, and Mad Men has inspired an entire generation of office workers to ask, can I drink at work? This is also the year when Apple debuted the iPhone, Katherine Heigl got knocked up, and Fergie taught the world how to be glamorous. But we're not here to fly the first class up in the sky, pop champagne, or live the life, because today we're going to be counting down Electronic Gaming Monthly's best reviewed games of 2007. Flossy, Flossy. You know, there's a feeling in the industry that gamers are quick to move on. Once that new console arrives, everybody's on to the next generation with no interest in looking backwards. But if this list teaches us anything, it's that neither critics nor gamers were ready to give up on the PlayStation 2. Our first example of that is Shin Megami Tensei Persona 3, which was released on a last-generation console some 21 months after the next generation kicked off. To put it in perspective, that would be like Grand Theft Auto 6 coming out exclusively on the PlayStation 4 in August of 2022. Yeah, it just goes to show how much life the trusty old PlayStation 2 had left in it in 2007. Ray understood that you might need a little convincing. Popular RPGs don't usually include dungeon hackiness and AI-directed friends the Persona 3's battle system do, but don't let that stop you from trying it. Its style is unmatched. He concluded with a ringing endorsement in this sage advice: don't let the words dating sim scare you. Fitch agreed, raving that the Japanese high school setting is incredibly immersive thanks to Persona 3's minimalist but expertly crafted localization, which assumes knowledge of many Japanese culture and linguistic terms. But even if you don't know Golden Week from Golden House, you'll still have a blast. Persona 3 was a sea change for the franchise, which is just one of the reasons why Electronic Gaming Monthly gave it an average score of 9.2 out of 10. After years of settling for quirky PSP strategy games, Electronic Gaming Monthly was anxious for a proper Metal Gear Solid game. They didn't want to collect cards, battle ghost puppets, or construct the cardboard Solid Eye. They just wanted to sneak around and choke out guards. That's it. Thankfully, that's exactly what Konami gave them, with Metal Gear Solid Portable Ops, the second and final PlayStation Portable game to make it onto the best reviewed list. This was a return to form for the franchise, and the timing was perfect. With Guns of the Patriot still 2 years off and Snake Eater milked to death, this was the perfect time for a game like Portable Ops. Brian sums it up perfectly. While I never felt the urge to trip on acid, Portable Ops is just what I wanted, and what I never thought I wanted from this series on PSP. The classic, sneaky gameplay from the console titles remains wonderfully intact, yet I got strangely addicted to recruiting soldiers and sending them out to collect intel items and new members also willing to follow the cause. Scooter also loved the game and was especially impressed with the PSP's functionality. The game's varied use of the PSP's online capabilities, such as snagging soldiers via Wi-Fi hotspots, and the fantastic graphics, make this a stunning showcase for the system despite funky controls and occasional online latency hiccups. With an average score of 9.2 out of 10, Metal Gear Solid Portable Ops sneaks its way into the 9th position. You know, it's a shame that EGM never got around to reviewing Peace Walker, which is arguably the best Metal Gear game on the PSP. Oh well. After years of open-world mobsters, fantasy adventuring, and wars from the past, we saw a real big push towards science fiction in the mid-2000s. Thanks in large part to the success of games like Halo and Metroid Prime, we suddenly started to see a lot more aliens and crazy technology show up in big-budget games. In fact, I'd classify half of the games on this list as sci-fi, more if you count Metal Gear Solid Portable Ops. But while there may have been a lot of competition in 2007, no science fiction game was more ambitious than Mass Effect. Not only was it the much-hyped new game from the developers of Knights of the Old Republic and Jade Empire, but it was also the first chapter in a proposed trilogy that promised to give players a choice of how the story unfolds. For John, the brilliance of Mass Effect is in the way the story unfolds around you. Far from being a ponderous sci-fi exposition, Mass Effect boasts a dynamic, well-constructed range. The wonderfully scripted dialogue provokes everything from chuckles to moments of real angst. It's also extremely well-paced. The game introduces characters and then gives them some space to breathe before their purpose is revealed. And the side quests, far from being tiresome, provide real insight into the themes of the central quest. Brian, on the other hand, liked the game for a completely different reason. For me, it all begins with the combat. While you can start and stop the action like in previous BioWare games, the system here is so much more diverse that you can choose to play Mass Effect as a run-and-gun shooter, use cover, and then let your AI buddies bring the magic. With the editors still being years away from being disappointed by the trilogy's ultimate ending, the original Mass Effect averaged an incredible 9.2 out of 10. Believe it or not, one of Sony's biggest PlayStation 2 sequels came out 4 months after the release of the PlayStation 3. For many, God of War 2 was the system's swan song, an epic farewell message for a 7-year-old console that managed to sell more than 150 million units. And what a way to go out, because God of War 2 was everything you could possibly want in a sequel. More action, better gameplay, bigger bosses, and crazier plot twists. The game was so over the top that you didn't even bat an eye when Harry Hamlin shows up to reprise his iconic role from 1981's Clash of the Titans. Yeah! Matt couldn't get enough and described God of War 2 as a back-to-back string of some of the most memorable moments in video game history. He liked that the sequel put you into scenes that are amplified by how well they fit into the story, and challenges anybody to come away from this game without being incredibly excited for the eventual PlayStation 3 sequel. Michael loved the epic action and bosses, but it was what surprised him that is the most interesting thing about his review. What did surprise me, however, was that God of War 2 failed to impress me as much as the original. With 2 new weapons, I fully expected to dissect and dismember baddies in new, more brutal ways. Yeah, that wasn't the case. You don't use the Barbarian Hammer, Spear of Destiny, or Blade of Olympus for any special fatalities. Thankfully, the onslaught of new baddies impressed Michael enough to overlook the brief disappointment, leading to an EGM average of 9.2 out of 10. Alright, so this is the point in the show where I feel obligated to remind you that sometimes the best reviewed game of the year wasn't actually released in that year. Because of the time it takes to lay out and then publish a magazine, Electronic Gaming Monthly wouldn't have a chance to cover the biggest games of November until their January issue. That's exactly what happened to Gears of War. Released just in time to celebrate the Xbox 360's 1-year anniversary, this was Microsoft's big action game for the 2006 holiday season. It was supposed to have been vying for Game of the Year with Final Fantasy VII, Kingdom Hearts 2, and Advanced Warfighter in the last episode. But because of the way the publishing works, here it is going up against God of War 2 and Mass Effect. Now, if it makes you feel any better, I have a hunch that plenty of gamers were still playing Gears of War well into 2007. When it came to the EGM editors, they were just happy to have a great new science fiction franchise on the Xbox 360. Gears of War wasn't just a placeholder until Halo 3 arrived, but rather an amazing looking game that quickly established itself as Microsoft's newest AAA franchise. Andrew called it an incredible experience throughout. Though the story doesn't quite break free of the sci-fi cliches, Epic really captured that gritty, war-torn atmosphere. Incredible art and sound, and even small things like the camera shaking during the roadie run make it feel like you're embedded with these guys. And the graphics are so good that in a way you don't even notice them. You lose yourself in the game because everything looks the way it should, and that allows you to focus on shooting things up real good. With an average score of 9.5 out of 10, Gears of War is the 6th best reviewed game of 2007. And before you ask, had EGM reviewed it one issue earlier, Gears of War would have been the 3rd best reviewed game of 2006. Yeah, once again, Marcus got screwed. Once a mainstay of the best reviewed list, fighting games largely took a backseat in the mid-2000s. In fact, it's been 4 long years since the last time a one-on-one beat-em-up even graced the countdown. Given that one of the last fighting games to crack the top 10 was Virtua Fighter 4 Evolution in 2004, it probably doesn't come as much of a surprise to learn that 2007's best fighter was none other than Virtua Fighter 5. After a rocky launch, this was one of the PlayStation 3's first must-own games, and yet another great entry in one of EGM's favorite fighting franchises. This point was not lost on Milkman, who started his review by noting that it's interesting that no matter how many top-tier fighters show up and try to steal Virtua Fighter's lunch money, none of them do. That task is even more difficult now because Virtua Fighter 5 kicks everyone's ass up and down the block. Sure, some fighting series like Soul Calibur and Tekken distract you with all kinds of extra modes and, bowling, but Virtua Fighter 5 rises above the pack thanks to the sheer depth of its gameplay. Brian also loved the game, but wasn't gonna let it off the hook for its shortcomings. His biggest complaint? The utter lack of online goodies. I don't want leggy internet fights either, but at least throw me a bone like leaderboards or downloadable garb. I know people are bitching about the price of the PlayStation 3, but think about it this way. Consider that the $60 game essentially replaces a $40,000 arcade cabinet. It sure seems worth it to me. I just want to point out that this ill-conceived logic can be used really against anything and falls apart the moment you even think about it. I'm telling you, it's a really bad argument against the debate over the PlayStation 3's $600 asking price. But look, we're not going to get into that here because Virtua Fighter 5 averaged a bone-crunching score of 9.7 out of 10, making it the best reviewed fighting game since 2004. From the moment the Xbox 360 launched, the question on everybody's mind was, when does Halo 3 come out? For many, it was not soon enough. After Halo 2 left us dangling in 2004, people couldn't wait to finish the fight, and the 3-year wait was unbearable. All that hype was only compounded by the introduction of the new hardware, which had first-person gamers speculating about what a next-generation Halo would even look like. Is it possible that this would turn out to be the greatest sequel of all time? With all that standing in front of Halo 3, it's easy to see why some were a bit let down by the experience. Shu puts it bluntly. So, you won't be recapturing that feeling that you got the first time you fought the Flood or played as the Arbiter. The huge, oh wow moments just aren't there. But you will still come away with some fond memories from scenes like the Scarab fight, at least one off-the-beaten-path joke conversation, and a frantic stage at the end that is clearly a throwback to something everybody loved from the first Halo. Jeremy agreed, summing it up this way. I can't shake a bit of a been-there-done-that sensation, though. Halo 3 often feels like a bigger, more polished take on its predecessor's ideas. I want more from the grand finale than a retread of Halo's last level. More from the big set pieces than remixes of Halo 2's Scarab encounter. Once was great, 3 times is pushing it. Despite these complaints, all 3 editors agreed that the game is worth picking up for the online multiplayer alone. The Forge map editor and incredible music were highlights that helped Halo 3 earn an average score of 9.7 out of 10, winding up as the 4th best reviewed game of 2007. I think it's safe to call the Orange Box the best video game deal of 2007. Not only did this compilation allow console owners a chance to play a near-perfect port of Half-Life 2, but the collection also included the episodic sequel chapters and the multiplayer Team Fortress 2, as well as a short puzzle game that promised us cake. It's this variety that most impressed Crispin. I could look around and see a few players skirmishing in Team Fortress 2, the most well-balanced, deepest team-based shooter on consoles. Across the room, I see another reviewer contorting a spatial reasoning through the mental gymnastics of Portal, a revolutionary and hilarious but too short puzzle game that delivers an aha rush every time you use your dimensional doorway gun properly. I see someone else engaged in a firefight in Episode 1's claustrophobia-inducing environments. Meanwhile, I was having the most fun with Episode 2, which rolls out in show-stopping encounters and culminates with a final battle that requires serious multitasking. It's this variety that was the lure of the Orange Box. But hold on, wait a second. What was that again about Portal being too short? Sean was quick to push back. Crispin's too short Portal is enough for me, a 3-hour head trip, no filler, with a plot as dizzying as the downside-up puzzler's warp gate crashing concept. He raved that the 2 sequel episodes are a reflection of the fact that with 2 5-hour games, the developer's question is, can we sacrifice this to the cutting room, and not, how can we copy and paste the scenarios until we fit a quota? It seemed that everybody was worried that this incredible compilation would get overshadowed by the flashier Halo 3. But with an average score of 9.8 out of 10, Gordon Freeman has no problem topping Master Chief. After a 3-year break, Electronic Gaming Monthly is back to handing out perfect 10s. May have taken 25 issues and 650 games, but The Legend of Zelda: The Twilight Princess ended up being one of 2 games to score the coveted 10 out of 10 in 2007. Now, before you leave an angry comment telling me that this particular Zelda game launched with the Wii in 2006, I just want you to remember that everything that I said about Gears of War applies here. What makes this situation unique is that despite not being reviewed until the January 2007 issue, The Twilight Princess would go on to be named Electronic Gaming Monthly's 2006 Game of the Year. By all accounts, this probably should have knocked Metal Gear Solid 3 Subsistence off the top of the charts in the last episode. But because of magazine lead time, here it is going up head-to-head with EGM's best game of 2007. Ugh, what a mess. Crispin gave a word of warning with his high marks. Twilight Princess is the most rich, deep, fun, and emotionally resonant game I've played all year. It's also not for everyone. It's not, for instance, for the geriatric gamer Nintendo shows waggling Wii remotes and ads. He complained that the graphics look dated and Hyrule's children look fugly, but concluded that no game, not even the open-world Grand Theft Auto series, gives you this much variety or such a sense that anything could happen. Shane agreed, noting that never have I seen a better argument for longer game development times. For anyone who thought we'd never see a Zelda better than Ocarina of Time, prepare to have your mind blown! And your Wii purchase instantly validated. This was the more mature and realistic Zelda game that the EGM editors had been yearning for, which may help to explain why each of them gave The Twilight Princess a perfect 10 out of 10, and named it the best game of 2006, even though it was technically reviewed in 2007. If you're wondering what could possibly top Electronic Gaming Monthly's 2006 Game of the Year, then let me introduce you to BioShock, Electronic Gaming Monthly's 2007 Game of the Year. Okay, I'll admit it, this isn't one of the cleanest finishes we've had to one of these countdowns, but don't let that get in the way of the brilliance that is BioShock. After years of first-person shooters geared for multiplayer deathmatches, The EGM editors couldn't wait to reveal the stories and secrets found in the underwater city of Rapture. And oh boy, what an adventure it is! Filled with unforgettable characters and one of the best twists in video game history. Andrew was quick to call the game the complete package. The visual design is stunning, from the abundant aquatic effects to the sinister shadowing and lighting. The themes are both dominant and subtle, with the familiar and lengthy utopia gone wrong story that's twisted in uniquely disturbing ways, many of which require honest-to-God moral choices on your part. Do you use the standard weaponry or special plasmid powers that grant you control over the elements? Do you hack the unfriendly machines and turn them into allies, or dispatch them with some explosive shots? Do you harvest little girls or set them free? Garnet also loved the game's complexity. No single part defines the game though, and that sets BioShock apart as truly special. It combines its elements with complementary balance of superlative whole that generates synchronicity of character, place, and story. I became so completely wrapped up in it that I never got bogged down by all the freedom the game affords you. I just played it, making choices about what to do next or how to develop myself almost as second nature because I was that in tune with the experience. Oh man, with glowing reviews like that, it's easy to see why BioShock averaged a rapturous 10 out of 10 and was named the best game of 2007 by Electronic Gaming Monthly. Hey, thanks for watching this episode of EGM's Best and Worst. If you liked what you saw here, then you should know that we'll be posting new episodes all the way up to the new year. That means that we have 3 more episodes to go before 2021. We're almost done, folks. Now, here's the question I have for you. What is your favorite game from 2007? There are just so many great games to choose from, so I doubt you'll have a problem picking one. Let me see your choice in the comments below. In other news, it's Christmas Eve. In case you're curious, we'll be back tomorrow, Christmas Day, to count down Electronic Gaming Monthly's worst reviewed games of 2007. So, if you're stuck at home or just not doing the whole holiday thing this year, hey, maybe hang out with me. We'll talk about some crummy games. Who knows, maybe Sonic will show up. It'll be awesome. Anyway, if you liked what you saw here, then would you kindly click that subscribe button and support what we're doing here? Until then,